So we're going to look at putting it all together now, the 3 core sensitivities, basically the way that you can start, and this is where you start with managing. Okay, if there's someone that avoids separation, avoids distance, have a think about they may be separation sensitive. Okay, so this is the way that you act. And it's like saying that if you go to a doctor and they say, well, you don't have an illness, the absence of illness doesn't mean that you're healthy. Okay, so what is the doctor going to say? Well, if you've got an illness, they say, well, you know, eat well, regular exercise and everything else. If you don't have an illness, they still say eat well, regular exercise, all of this sort of stuff. Okay, so this is the same sort of thing. So if you find someone that is they seem to avoid separation or they avoid distance, okay, you know, there's these sort of things, have a think about what's going on in their head. Okay, and their dilemma is, I cannot be myself and truly expect connection. If I'm myself, I'm going to be abandoned. Okay, so think about that and see how you can guide your actions there as well. And there's intense pressure to be rewarded for neediness, helplessness and incompetence. So that's your way into them. That's how you're going to get them. If you give them what you want, what they want, they're going to be looking at coming back to you. Okay, so when we move over to the next one, if you meet someone that is afraid of rejection, avoids vulnerability and need, you know, oh yes, you know, I'm special, or I'm not an expert, I don't need your help, you know, but this is what we're going to do. This could be the esteem sensitive coming out. So what have they got going in their head? Okay, to get close leads to rejection. Why is that? Because they can't live up to their promises a lot of times. Okay, so you just need to be able, okay, whatever they say, take it with a grain of salt, and then don't punish them or don't react if they don't do what they say. Okay, positive reinforcement. It's the same way that you train, you know, they don't train drug dogs by giving them drugs. Okay, they train the same way that they train explosive dogs, which is that if they do something negative, they just do not acknowledge it, they don't move. Whenever they do something positive, they move. So without even communicating with them, whenever someone that's esteem sensitive does something that you want them to do, you acknowledge it. If they don't do it, if they do something you don't want them to do, oh, that's nice, you know, that sort of thing. Or yeah, you know, off you go, you're welcome to do that. I wouldn't do that, you know. But it's just, don't get involved with it in there as well. But the problem is that as soon as you say, oh yeah, that's great, they're going to take it as, but hang on, you told me that was great. So they're going to see that as, that's what they're going to continue doing. So if you're frustrated and you're tired and you slip that out, this is where it can come into that you give them an inch and they're going to take a mile. Okay, so that's why it's looking at, but to be truly separated is also rejection to them. Okay, so if you don't, if you avoid them and everything like that because you just can't deal with them, okay, they're going to take that as rejection, whether or not that's what's happening or not. Okay, so what are they after? They're thinking, I should be acknowledged for my specialness and performance, but if I ask for it, it'll be perceived as entitlement. Okay, so this is what I mentioned before. So it's a key thing. Give them the acknowledgement for the things that you do think are special and performance, and you've got to be honest with them. Okay, if it's not, then you've got to tell them, but they're going to go, oh, you're just being negative and all this sort of, no, I'm not being negative. It's just my opinion. I don't like that. I'm quite happy with it. Other people might like it, but I don't. Okay, and you can do whatever you want, you know. So that's where it comes into, but they're not going to, if they get close to you and that sort of thing, they might be asked, oh, what do you think of this? Or what do you think of this? What do you think? And it drives you nuts. Okay, they're looking for affirmation, particularly if they're an extrovert. They're going to want that external stimulation. Okay, so the last one comes into afraid of being controlled and avoids closeness. And this is what I was saying, safety sensitive. A lot of people that have been through abuse and abusive situations and come out of them on the other side can be quite safety sensitive because they don't want to get back to that. They tend to spend a lot of time trying to work out why he or she, the partner or someone else in their previous history, why would they do that to them? And the reason why they can't understand why they would do it is because they're not them. So ask them the question, well, you know, do you really want to know why they did that? Because then you've got to think like them. Do you want to think like them? No. Okay, well, let's just go, okay, well, is that what you want to do? Do you want to do that to someone else? And quite often, this is where it gets into the stage where they do things like that to someone else because they know that it works, because it's what worked on them. Okay, so this is where they can project, and they know that manipulation does work because that's what they're fearing of. So they tend to do it themselves there as well. Okay, so to seek closeness is to be taken advantage of. This is what they're thinking. To separate is to be left in isolation. Okay, so they don't, this is where you've got to think of how am I going to keep them in the Goldilocks zone. When you go too far and you go over their boundaries, you just have to pull back and acknowledge it straight away. There's nothing you can do, or say is going to change it. It's happened. It's reality for them. So then you need to pull back. Okay, and then it's like, dealing with kids and cats. Okay, if you go running and chasing them to pat the cat, then the cats run away. But if you just sit there and everything else, the cat will come and they're coming down and sit next to you. Because it wants the attention. Oh, well, you're not giving me love, and then it feels safe that it can come to you because you're not going to chase it. Okay, so what are they looking for? Okay, well, they need to be safe. That's what it is. Intrusive people should mind their own business. That's the reaction you're going to get. Okay, so this is what you do. So if you are being intrusive, you'd mind your own business. Stop asking questions. That's what they're looking for. Okay, so looking at where all this fits in, and it goes through the core sensitivities come from years and years of attachment research and attachment styles, and another thing called object relations theory, which is moving on from Freud's theory in regards to that sex is the overwhelming driver. There are other drivers, and objects can be the motivation as well. So what the Circle of Security parenting program, the directors for that have done, they put these two together, and it works into childhood attachment, which it's developed in early childhood, but it's then keeps developing throughout into your adult life, and what they call adult attachment as well. Okay, so what is it? Basically, it's made up of on an axis, and it could be if people have got a negative model of others, then they're going to have high avoidance. If they've got a positive model of others, they want low avoidance. So this is where it comes into, you can see some people go away, come back, go away, come back, that sort of thing. They're on this scale. Okay, but then it looks at anxiety, and this is where it comes into, if they've got a negative self-confidence, they've negative opinion of self, okay, they're going to have high anxiety. If they've got a high positive opinion of self, they're going to have low anxiety, and that's what's going to affect their actions. So looking at people that don't have core sensitivities or aren't easily triggered with their core sensitivities, they're comfortable with intimacy and autonomy in close relationships, and they're usually more self-confident. Okay, so they're on that side of the scale with their lower anxiety. Okay, when you get into other areas there as well, okay, dismissive. So who's the dismissive? Well, that's your esteem sensitive. Compulsively self-reliant, downplays the importance of intimate relationships. I don't need it, I know what I'm doing, all this sort of stuff. Okay, and if you just did what I told you to, then you'd be happy because they don't need help. They're not vulnerable. Then you've got people that are preoccupied. Now this is where your separation sensitive comes in. Okay, so they're preoccupied with keeping close relationships. They're dependent on others for their self-worth. They can be codependent. They don't feel good unless they're helping. They're demanding. Their approach or their orientation towards others is about keeping the relationships close. Okay, and that's going to be at the expense of their own self. They're looking at being selfless and that sort of thing, and that's where they can get themselves into cash flow issues and stuff like that in business. Okay, so then you've got the last one, which is the fearful, which is they're highly anxious and they're they've got a negative opinion of themselves. Okay, now this is one where it can come through in leadership too, that they've been abused by a leader in the past, where they haven't been told what to do. They've got no confidence. They don't feel like going into work. Nothing they do is ever good enough. Okay, they're dependent on others. Okay, they avoid intimacy due to fear of rejection, low self-esteem, high anxiety. Okay, they need reassurance. Okay, they need to be given clear key performance indicators, and they need to be fairly judged in this case to get them out of it. Okay, so what can happen is they can then move from, they might be fearful in leadership, but then they could go either way. They could go into preoccupation, where then they depend on that leader for all their decision-making process, and they can't make their own decision. Or they might become dismissive and they do their own thing, but this is usually a case that, okay, well, they've got the self-confidence back, they've got a positive model of themselves, but they just don't, the boss doesn't know what I'm doing, he doesn't know what I do, or she doesn't know what I do. So this is where it comes into, I'm thinking of, from my experience there, where I've gone, okay, yep, I thought, my boss doesn't know what I do. they were just letting me go and everything else, and they didn't want to jump in. Okay. Then when I worked out that yes, they do know what I do and they do have a lot of good ideas, then it became more of a secure attachment there as well, and it leads into it. And there was even things like he was saying, look, you're working 10 hours a day on an 8-hour shift. That means that you got poor time management skills. And I just thought, well, no, I'm just putting in extra effort. But what he was saying was that he wanted me to do it in 6 hours because then I could help him for 2 hours and he could teach me more. So he said, so what do we need to do to get you down to being able to do your job in 6 hours? So we've got 2 hours spare. So just in case of emergencies, you can do extra stuff, or you can spend that time doing whatever you want. So it was interested in my job. He wasn't just having a go at me. Okay, but I needed to build up a trust with him to be able to get into that relationship now. And he's gone on to, and he's running one of the major tourist attractions in Australia at the moment. Okay, well, he was running a big one then, but he's actually kept going up in the world there as well. Okay. So if you're looking and you're dealing with people, you don't have to counsel people. Okay, this is the thing. This is a big mistake. If you're not qualified to help them or to diagnose conditions, okay, that's the thing. This is not about diagnosis. This is about you changing your actions, not trying to change the actions of other people. You're changing your actions, which is going to change their reactions to you. Okay, so that gives them the choice to do it, or it's going to highlight their actions, and then if they accept the consequences of their actions, that means that's basically where it comes into the fact that, well, they can change the way they're thinking. Okay, so it's not an inflexible form of the core sensitivities. That's why that you can find that people can flick between the two and or the three and things like that as well. Okay, if they do actually have a disorder, they're going to be the most predictable because they're not going to change it. You know, they're always going to act like this. If they know that you know this and you can predict their actions, then they're going to try and change it, okay? But they're always going to go back to default in the stress situations to these core sensitivities, in whichever one that they can't change or that's going to be going through. They're trying to manage it themselves, and they can actually manage it. And once they've got the trust with you, that's where it comes down to, that you can work with people and you can get the most out of people there as well. And it's the same coming through with your customers. Okay, so if you're dealing with your customers and they start to trust you and you go through it, then what you need to do is you can't help everyone. You need to focus on, you can't help every Mary in the dairy, as a friend of mine says. It's a branding coach. It just comes down to, you need to pick your customers. People will trust you more if you say, that's not what I do, but here's this person might be able to help you. So this is where you refer it. And it's the same when people donate things to you. If someone donates something to you and you can't use it and you go, oh yeah, thanks. They go, wow, that's doing good. But are you taking something away from that someone else can use? And you go, yeah, well, I might use that one day. Okay, but can you use it now is the thing. That's when it has value to you. And it's the same with the customers. Yes, they might be able to use it. And yes, there's all these good uses for it. But how much are they going to use it now? That's when it's of value to them. So you might say, yes, you're buying this, but what's the difference between buying it from this supplier and buying it from you, and you're twice the price? What do they get out of it? Well, it's creating the change to the environment and everything else. That's fine long term, but what do they get out of it now? Because there's a time value on money. By the time the effects of the environment are felt, this $20 could be worth $30. Okay, so what you're actually doing is you're actually asking them to pay more when they don't see the value in it now. Okay, so this is where you have to talk them into, okay, well, here's the value now. This is what's actually going on right now, and this is the effect, the immediate effect it has by you doing this there as well. Okay, so hopefully this gives you a bit of an idea of how you can use the core sensitivities to manage relationships in business. And if you do need see someone that needs help, there's organizations. Check out Beyond Blue. Livin.org is another good one there as well. Or go to your GP and talk about a mental health plan. They've got these set up. You go in and specifically say, there's business coaches that work on mindset, but they're not qualified to give the professional advice, mental health advice. Some of them are. Some of them are actually psychologically trained. They're counselors or things like this too. Okay, so they are actually trained to give the advice and things like that. But there are facilities available to go to the GP and get referred to a mental health professional and get put onto a mental health plan. Okay, so there's things like that as well through the Medicare system too. Okay, thanks for your time, and I hope you got a lot out of this, and we'll talk to you soon.